Greetings and a warm welcome to the National Conference on Incarceration, Interdisciplinary Perspectives, Policies, and Implications for Practice, organized by Christ deemed to be University, Delhi NCR, in collaboration with India Vision Foundation and Christ Consultancy. I, Hema, Assistant Professor from the Department of Psychology and Conference Coordinator, deem it an honor to be your host for this inaugural ceremony. This national conference is convened with an objective to understand incarceration and its detrimental impact, not only on individuals, but on families and communities. To provide a platform for sharing information on best practices for the people who work in the criminal justice system. To explore interdisciplinary approaches for rehabilitation of families, individuals, and children of incarcerated parents, and reduce the after effects of an imprisoned life on the society as a whole through practical experiences of people working in different areas of action. And finally, to provide opportunity for academicians, field professionals, and policymakers to network and collaborate to jointly concept and execute intervention programs towards crime prevention, reintegration, and rehabilitation. Because if there is light in the soul, there will be beauty in the person. This beauty will translate into harmony in the house. If there is harmony in the house, there will be order in the nation. With order in the nation, there will be peace in the world. To mark the beginning of this auspicious day, let us invoke the blessings of the divine. The lamp is a symbol of the divine light within each one of us, of a higher self that leads us from darkness to light, from ignorance to wisdom. To light the wick of knowledge and let it illumine this gathering, I request our esteemed dignitaries, Father Dr. Viju P. Devasi, Campus Director, Christ deemed to be University, Delhi NCR, Dr. Tony Sam George, Dean, School of Social Sciences, Central Campus, Bangalore, Dr. Surekha C., Head, School of Humanities and Social Sciences, Delhi NCR, Ms. Monica Dhawan, Director, India Vision Foundation, Dr. Ridhima Shukla, Academic Coordinator, Department of Psychology, Ms. Pearly Sanil, Head, CVF Program, India Vision Foundation, Ms. Renu Nag, Head of Learning and Development, India Vision Foundation, Ms. Ilika Guha Majumdar, Conference Coordinator, to arrive on the stage as the choir of the university leads us in prayer. As the lamp of knowledge illumines this gathering, let us all pray together for the successful execution and takeaways of this event. Thank you, dignitaries. The magnanimity of an event is enriched by the people who make it. This national conference, which is a collaborative effort to initiate discussions and actions, is augmented by the participants who have joined us in offline and virtual platforms. May I take this opportunity to invite the thought leader and convener of this conference, Dr. Surekha Chukali, Head, School of Humanities and Social Sciences, and the co-convener, Ms. Monica Dhawan, Director, India Vision Foundation, to welcome this august gathering.
As I walked out the door towards the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew if I did not leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I would still be in prison. Good morning, everyone. These words by Dr. Nelson Mandela very beautifully sum up the essence of what we all have gathered here today for. And it sets the tone for initiating conversations, discussions, and deliberations on the all-important question of how to stop recidivism. It is of paramount importance that the question of how to stop recidivism, and it is also important that the academia, the practitioners, along with policymakers in criminal justice system, collectively work towards initiating interdisciplinary solutions and interventions which are focused not just on crime prevention, but also on rehabilitation and reintegration of prisoners and also their families who need the support. So designing community-based programs which help reduce the stigma, and also working on designing social and psychoeducational support programs for families of incarcerated is also a very important need of the hour. So today, I, Dr. Surekha from the Department of Psychology, Christ deemed to be University, Delhi NCR, along with my co-convener, Ms. Monica Dhawan from India Vision Foundation, Director, welcome you all to this national conference on incarceration, interdisciplinary perspectives, policies, and implications for practice in a hybrid mode. We have about 400 participants attending this seminar, national conference right now. Some of you are here in the offline mode, and we have most of the other participants on online as well. So it is going to be an important event for us today. I'm extremely honored to welcome the Director of Christ deemed to be University, Delhi NCR campus, Dr. Father Viju P. Devasi, for his august presence, and also thank him for taking out his time and also constantly supporting and motivating us in organizing this conference. So we welcome you, Father. Just take one and go. It is indeed a great pleasure and honor to welcome Dr. Kiran Bedi, founder, India Vision Foundation, as our honorary speaker, and for being the person who initiated the idea of collaboration of an academic university working actively with reputed organizations like India Vision Foundation. Thank you, ma'am, for your innovative ideas and taking time out from your very busy schedule to initiate this conference, and also for addressing your the gathering today with thought-provoking ideas. We welcome you, ma'am, and we hope to see you in our campus sometime very soon. Yeah. I now request Ms. Monica to continue.
Good morning, everyone. I, Monica Dhawan, extend a warm welcome to Father Sunny Joseph, Campus Administrator, Delhi NCR, Father Benny Thomas, Director, Christ Consultancy, Dr. Tony Sam George, Dean School of Social Sciences, Dr. Shija Karalam, Coordinator Center for Research, Ms. Anamika from Christ Consultancy.
I take pleasure in welcoming the team from India Vision Foundation, headed by Ms. Monica Dhawan, Director, and also the other team members who are here with us, Ms. Renu Nag, Ms. Pearly, and all the other delegates who are here from India Vision Foundation. Thank you so much for your present, constant support and communication with us in initiating this conference. We welcome you all.
So I welcome the resource person, Dr. Rupneet Lali, Dr. Vijay Raghavan, Dr. KP Singh, Dr. Ruchi Sinha, Dr. Sunny Joseph, Pooja Thummer for the session. We are extremely happy to welcome the moderators, Dr. Sapna, Dr. Suparna Majumdar, Dr. Kusum Lata, Ms. Renu Nag for the conference. Our heartfelt welcome to all the participants presenting their research in the form of symposia, oral and poster presentation, and wish them good luck. A big welcome to all the participants of this conference and to all the faculty from Delhi NCR campus. Today is a happy day for both the organization, as this conference is one of the major outcomes of our collaboration. Prerna project is another important collaboration which involved designing and implementing life skill modules for children of incarcerated parents for a period of 1 year. We also have a collective undertaken a need assessment exploring the perceptions of fathers in prison on their and their family needs. We look forward for many more such collaboration with Department of Psychology.
Thank you, ma'am. And we hope today will be the day where we have meaningful conversations, and tomorrow be the day where we begin acting on our deliberations and discussions. So wishing everyone a very engaging session. All the best. Thank you.
All the best.
Christ deemed to be University, Delhi NCR, functions on the ethos of servant leadership. It is our pleasure to have amongst us the leader whose vision guides a plethora of goal-oriented actions in the institution. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome Father Dr. Viju P. Devasi, Campus Director, to enlighten us with his thoughts and kind words. Over to you, Father.
Good morning. Dear Dr. Kiran Bedi, Dr. Tony Sam George, Ms. Monica Dhawan, Ms. Renu Nag, Ms. Pearly, team from India Vision Foundation, Dr. Sureka, Dr. Rithima, my dear faculty colleagues, participants of the conference, and my dear Christites. It gives me immense joy today to be part of this inaugural session of the National Conference on Incarceration. And I'm very glad that we have a great visionary, a model for us to listen to and be inspired in the person of Dr. Kiran Bedi. I would have a couple of occasions to listen to her speeches online, obviously. Last time when we had our celebration, I was part of the celebration of the annual day of India Vision Foundation, where Dr. Kiran Bedi was inspiring all of us. I want to acknowledge and thank India Vision Foundation, founded by Dr. Kiran Bedi, and presently, directed by Dr. Monica Dhawan, who initiated this collaboration between Christ and India Vision Foundation. I know we have to walk miles together to achieve our goal to do three things, I believe, which will be focal point of our discussion today. 3 R's. One is rehabilitation. Second is reflecting on recidivism. And third, on reform. So 3 terms I would like all of us to discuss, reflect, in the context of incarceration and its impact. I repeat, rehabilitation, recidivism, and reform. Well, India Vision Foundation has our excellence into service, serving different vulnerable population while we fulfill our mission. We fulfill our vision of education, and all higher education institutions are supposed to do the same, I believe. So once again, I'm very, very glad to acknowledge the presence of Dr. Kiran Bedi. And as Dr. Surega said, we would like to have you, ma'am, on our campus to inspire, all our students. Well, I would wish a day that you address all our students on campus, maybe, in 2-3 sessions, all the schools of our students, so that I know you can inspire a lot of our youngsters to do good for our nation, to do good for the world, to make it a better place. I want to once again thank India Vision Foundation, all my faculty colleagues and my students who would actively involve today in reflecting about reform, rehabilitation, and to reduce recidivism of the criminals once they come back, if at all I don't know if you should call them criminals as also. So I wish all the very best for the conference. I want to acknowledge the presence of my faculty colleagues here, Dr. Tony, Dr. Sureka, and Ritima, Hema, and all my faculty who put this conference together today for the good of all of us. Thank you very much. God bless.
Thank you, Father, for your truly inspiring words. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the moment is finally here. She is an epitome of courage and fearlessness. She is an embodiment of willpower, determination, and resilience. She is a hero to many of us. With a huge round of applause from the audience, I would like to invite none other than Dr. Kiran Bedi for the special honorary address. To moderate this session, I would like to invite and introduce our esteemed dignitary, Dr. Tony Sam George, who is currently the Dean of Social Sciences at Christ Deemed to be University, Central Campus, Bangalore. Dr. Tony Sam George also heads the Department of Psychology. He is a visiting fellow to the Autonomous Medical University of Mexico at St. Louis Potosi and the University of Western Cape, South Africa. He is an alumnus of the Harvard Graduate School of Education and Sophia University, Tokyo, as part of the United Board Fellows Program. I now request our student volunteer to kindly welcome Dr. Tony Sam George for this session. Before we proceed, we wish to present to you a short glimpse of the noble activities initiated and executed by India Vision Foundation, an organization founded by Dr. Kiran Bedi.
My name is Riaika. मैं आपको प्रेरणा सेशन के बारे में कुछ बताना चाहती हूँ।
participants. It's an honor for us to listen to the life of Dr. Kiran Bedi and the work that she's contributed. I was asked to make a short introduction, but I think Dr. Kiran Bedi is already introduced to us more recently today through the video and the work that she's been doing. And for people in my generation and before us, Dr. Bedi is not a new name. She's been part of our lives. We watched her grow, we watched her work as India's first woman police officer joining the ranks of the Indian Police Services. We've seen her contribution in the United Nations. She was working as a civilian police advisor in peacekeeping operations. For those of you who are from academics, there are few public figures in India and in the world today who are academically celebrated. You should know, dear students, that Dr. Bedi holds a doctoral degree from IIT Delhi, and she also continued then to do her postdoctoral research, and she was awarded the Nehru Fellowship for that. And for those of you who are sports enthusiasts, and if you go to Wikipedia or any blog that speaks about Dr. Bedi's early life, you will notice that she was a tennis player, and she has won several awards in her younger days in the field of sports. But I think what's most important for all of us here is to look at Dr. Bedi's life and ask ourselves, how can we be inspired by her? And what lessons we can learn from her life, last so many decades that she spent contributing to reform. Dr. Bedi is a reformer, as Father Viju and others introduced. She's also an advocate. As much as she's a thought leader, she's also a leader who converts thoughts into actions. And the few interactions we've had with her, we know that she's somebody who wants every minute to count. And even as I'm sitting here and introducing her, at the back of my mind, I can hear a voice saying, you know, keep it short, because we want to listen to what Dr. Bedi has to say, and every minute counts for her. Dr. Bedi, as you've been introduced through the video, is the founder of the NGO India Vision Foundation that's been doing great work with the underprivileged in and around the correctional administration system, both in rural and semi-urban and urban India. But before that, she was instrumental in starting with the police force in India, the Navjyoti Foundation. For those of you who want to understand more about Dr. Bedi's life, there is a great biopic. How many of you have seen Dr. Bedi's biopic called Yes, Madam, Sir? If we can have a show of hands. I can see a few hands in the audience. So let me tell you today, go back after this conference, look up the biopic. It's been made by an Australian filmmaker. And I'd like all of you to watch that, because you're going to get inspired. Each time you listen and get an opportunity to look at the life of Dr. Bedi, you're going to get inspired. And for those of you in leadership, we have today in the audience hundreds of students. 20 years from now, when you look back at your life and you ask yourself, what have I accomplished? There is something that you can take out of the leaf of Dr. Bedi's life, and that's about leadership. More recently, she served as the 24th Lieutenant Governor of Puducherry. And based on her several years of experience in that role, she has produced a book among many other books, which is called Fearless Governance. And I would encourage all of you to look at that, because that book speaks about ground realities and the challenges that any leader faces. You've probably heard this said, you can strategize, you can plan, you can, conceptualize. But after the first bullet is fired in a war, everything is haywire and chaotic. And that's the life of a leader. We cannot predict what will happen to us in the next moment. And Dr. Bedi has put together a series of experiences in the book Fearless Governance. And for students here today, especially, I would encourage you to have a look at her book. You've seen the awards that she received, and one among them is the acclaimed Ramon Magsaysay Award, which is known also as Asia's Nobel Peace Prize. So it's indeed a privilege and honor for us to get few minutes to be inspired by Dr. Bedi this morning. And I hope that the conversation that she's going to start today, which is around prisons as a key to crime prevention, and that's the reframe that she's positioning for us today, to look at prisons from her life, from her experience, from her contribution, how the prison system and the correctional system in India, and of course the rest of the world, can be viewed from a perspective of prevention and promotion rather than remediation and correction. So Dr. Bedi, I'm inviting you to open up a conversation for us this morning. We're interested to hear about your thoughts. And after your brief address, we will also have a conversation around some key questions that the students and audience have here for you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Tony Sam George. I'm surprised and happily surprised.
Ma'am, you'll need to unmute. We can't.
No, I am on mute. Somebody else has to unmute.
Still can't hear you.
Somebody else has to unmute me. I am on mute. Can you hear me now?
Hear you.
But there's an echo. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Can we switch off any other speakers and systems around? Then they won't echo.
Sure.
Good. Can you hear me now? Yes. Can you hear me now? Can we say yes? Okay, good. I want to say thank you, Dr. Tony Sam George, I'm so happy to know and note that you've read the latest book or you've gone through the book, Fearless Governance. Yes, I do suggest to all the students and the audience sitting here, you're not hearing me, Dr. George, correctly? I think there's something not right. Something not right. Yeah, okay, good. I want to thank you for bringing about, I think it's an excellent idea. If the students can read this book, it will give you great many ideas as a problem solver. If you don't solve problems, remember you're a part of the problem yourself. And as a Lieutenant Governor, I didn't want to be a problem myself. I kept solving problems. How I did, have a look at this book. This is a practical case study for you. If you were in Harvard, and this case study would have costed you quite a few dollars, thousands of dollars to understand. Here it's coming free, it's online free. You can download it from my website, free, with our compliments. Download it and read it. It will inspire you as Dr. Tony Sam George wants you. There's another thing which probably has got, that this is a treatise on prison reforms. This is a product of the Nehru Scholarship. How to do this? This book is in 3 parts. What I saw when I went into Inspector General as Inspector General Prisons in Tihar in 1993. What I saw, that's the first part. The second part is, what did I do with what I saw? And the third, sorry. And the third is what emerged. Some dust around here. So this book is a great treatise. Had it been published overseas, friends, this would have been an amazing case study for Harvard studies and the MITs. But unfortunately, it was bought by me 19, it was ahead of its time. I request the departments of psychology, sociology, criminology of the Christ University, please factor this in your courses. Ask them to look at it as a project. If you do this as a part of the project, then you have so much in this, which Dr. George has mentioned, the book, the film, Doing Time, Doing Vipassana is another learning exercise for you. Biopic is different, but doing time, doing Vipassana is another valuable input for you in sociology, psychology, criminology, and many other behavioral sciences, etc. So I think 3 things will help you at the moment if there's a student community looking for ideas. Fearless governance, it's always possible, and the film Doing Time, Doing Vipassana. This will give you enough if you're looking for ideas and solutions, particularly in this area of reform. India Vision Foundation, whose director who's sitting with you, Monica Dhawan, Renu and Pearlie, these are very strong team members in leadership of the India Vision Foundation, which have actually been steering and carrying forward what we created through India Vision Foundation. And as mentioned, the India Vision Foundation was a baby, took its birth with the receipt of the Raman Magsaysay Award on 30th August 1994, when I was in Manila to receive the award. So the award has gone into dedication. It's been dedicated to the birth of this foundation and also provided the seed to begin with the prison reforms. So I would say the material is with you. Now, as a university, if you carry these forward as course material, as reading material, as study material, as research material, as analysis material, I cannot give you more, because this is an amazing document which is based on entire experience of 2 years, every day, 18 hours a day. I spent 18 hours a day living that, breathing the prison, working with 10,000 prisoners, which included women and children. Our project in the India Vision Foundation, which works with children of prisoners, is a product of that time, where we started play-based schools for the first time in India, of that quality and attention, where Supreme Court later said Tihar prison is a model. And a project called Children of Vulnerable Families, where we work. This is another unique project in the world, where we work with education of children of prisoners. By the way, we do many other things, but I think this is most unique signature project of the India Vision Foundation. Now, why are we together today? I saw, as Inspector General Prisons, that what is missing in that work is collaboration with academics. I saw it missing in collaboration with medical colleges, collaboration with academics, and collaboration with the NGOs. Now, that is what we got initiated, is collaboration with NGOs. We did that, and that's why India Vision Foundation continues to collaborate with prisons. What was missing, my friends, was collaboration with universities. And what does your university stand for? University stands for research. Universities stand for methodologies, policies, project reports, directions, analysis, thinking, solutions, identifying problems. And crime prevention is the goal of any prison. When I added the work yesterday, when we were discussing amongst all of you moderators and the university, particularly the conference chair, Dr. Surekha Chukale, when we were all discussing all this, I said, raise this issue in your seminar. What is the purpose of crime prevention, prison? Every prisoner, you must know, costs the public exchequer 40 to 50,000 a month, 40 to 50,000, which involves security costs, health costs, maintenance costs, and all that infrastructure costs, which goes into maintaining a person in the prison, is not less than 40 to 50,000 a month. Now, where does this money come from? It comes from yours and my pockets. Every prisoner less in the prison means that much money saved. But it's not a question of money. He comes after a lot of damage, by and large, barring exceptions. By and large, the people who come to the prison come at a heavy social cost. They've committed some violence. They've cheated people, a society of crores of rupees, or they've involved into huge amount of drug trafficking, which has costed health concerns, or they've committed murders, or they've committed various issues of domestic violence. They've come after leaving agony behind, and they failed to become good parents for their children. And they're leaving huge amount of social cost back. Whose children we work with? Whose children the India Vision Foundation? Look at the cost, social cost, every prisoner, when he indulges into crime, he first of all ruins his own family. He impacts his own children. He impacts the health of the society and his own. And then we pay for 50 to cost, we pay for 40 to 50,000. That's what I'm looking for, the 3 R's, as very well mentioned by our predecessor, my predecessor speaker, was that Dr. Devasi who said that, the 3 R's. I welcome that 3 R's. So crime prevention is another. So our objective of coming together is a beginning of a long journey. And I'm so happy that Christ University and India Vision Foundation is setting the tone, is setting the way forward. And it's a tiny beginning, but remember, there's plenty to do. That means that our student community, our faculty gets involved. They get involved. I need a handkerchief. Sorry. They get involved. Now, what is it that an NGO gives you, and what does the university gives you? University gives you thinking community, analytical community, writing community, researching community. What does an NGO give you? NGO gives you data, which you don't have. If the NGO doesn't collaborate with the university, how would you enter the university? How will you get the data from the university? So remember, unless we collaborate, NGO needs analysis. And what does police need? Unless you research in the prisons, how would police get to know what is causing crime? What is causing that disharmony in the society? So we three have to work together. When university students and faculty and students work together in harmony with the NGOs. And remember, till India Vision Foundation came, there was no data available. Nobody was allowing any data from the prisons to come. Our research in sociology, criminology, psychology, all these areas, forensics, behavioral, is deficient because prisons have never allowed NGOs and universities, by and large, unless permitted by the court or the senior most leadership, for data, primary data. You get secondary data, which is polluted data. So I would suggest this, that let's collaborate for a larger cause. And fortunately, you and I are partners. India Vision Foundation is a partner. You have Renu, you have Pearly, you have Monica sitting there. Forge on look at partnership. And remember, we don't only work in Dasna, where you are helping us. We are also working in Haryana prisons. We are working in many other prisons around the country. So we can have even comparative cultural comparisons. So this is the time, this is the day to celebrate a collaboration and a journey which will not stop. In fact, it should be a model for the rest of the country. What is the model? Every prison in every state collaborates with some state university to work together, the model which we will set up. So I think what we have to both of us do is create a model of collaboration and partnership so that other universities can follow this, so that more and more research comes into public domain and crime prevention, then police is bombarded with information that these are the causes of crime. Have your crime prevention strategies accordingly. So therefore, that means in the end, the society benefits, because when crime is prevented, society is securer, society is healthier, and most of all, families of criminals or so-called offenders is saved, and the children don't suffer. We have children friends who have actually lost out on their lives. Had India Vision Foundation not stepped in, those children were lost. They were lost. They would have been probably trafficked. They would have been lost. I mean lost. They went missing. So they would have been trafficked, particularly women and even boys. They would have been trafficked even for human organs. Matter is so serious that when a parent is in the prison and the child is not taken care of by a responsible guardian, the children roam the streets, they go missing. They get trafficked for even human organs. So it matters exceedingly challenging for the society as a whole. So here is a model we are creating. We announce a partnership and then working together to create a collaborative model for state prisons, and then go to the state universities saying collaborate. And then every year we should come together nationally to bring these partners together, pool in energy, good practices, learnings from each other. And I think after this India Vision Foundation website, will have this conference component. You as Christ University will also on your websites have a little box for that. We keep feeding information which comes, and I think that will be adding to social knowledge, social skills, and social intelligentsia in all subjects across criminology, psychology, even physiology, because even medical colleges can come in when they have issues. But I'm at the main component of humanities. All humanities can be beneficiaries in primary data, primary research, finally leading to crime prevention, and finally leading to increased security in the community. I want to thank Dr. Father Abraham Vetikankel Mani, your Vice Chancellor of the Christ University. I think without the Vice Chancellor's vision and support, we would not have had this collaboration today. Father Devasi, thank you very much. Father Benny Thomas, thank you so much for all of you. Tony, Sam, of course, you've introduced me so beautifully. Thank you, Tony. I want to thank the conference chair, Dr. Sureka, particularly for spending so much of energy in organizing this. Thank all the coordinators who have put in time and energy, who have been mentioned by earlier speakers. I want to thank all the speakers who found the time to join us and contribute and enrich us with their experience. Finally, to take us to this larger goal of 3 R's, which have been mentioned, 3 R's, and finally the goal of crime prevention, which reduces the revolving door so that the prisoner, when he goes, he doesn't come back. Our Nara, our slogan in Tihar jail every day was two slogans. Yahan se jayenge, वापस नहीं आएंगे. यहां से जाएंगे, वापस नहीं आएंगे. Second नारा was खुश रहेंगे, खुशियां बांटेंगे. Now, खुश कैसे रहेंगे जेल के अंदर? By how will you stay happy? By education. And this book, it's always possible, gives you all the steps required to be followed. And now we can continue to add to these. So friends, you don't have to look beyond. There is no other parallel of this kind of documentation of prison reform anywhere, because I've traveled more than 30 prisons around the world. I did not come across certain practices which we followed in Tihar way back from 1994. They're still relevant. All we have to do is add. What is missing in this book is the collaboration today of the kind we are establishing today, which is between India Vision Foundation and the Christ University. Back to you, and thank you for the honor done to me. Thank you. And to my foundation for bringing us together. Thank you, Christ University, once again. Thank you.
Dr. Bedi, thank you for opening up this conversation. Thank you for speaking to us from your experience. Thank you also for introducing other pieces of work in the form of books and case studies. And I think the university here is going to do that and open up opportunities for students to look at case studies that you have penned down. I myself spent some time at Harvard University. I know the value of case studies that emerge from ground reality. We have a few more minutes with you, Dr. Bedi, and you told us that you'd like to hear questions that students have, and the questions that they have, I think, are important because they are the ones few years from now who are going to take this vision forward. So I'm going to continue this conversation with one question to you, Dr. Bedi. A lifetime you've spent in reformation, in bringing about change in the correctional administration, prison systems. What psychosocial interventions stand out for you when it comes to reducing this revolving door phenomena that you see and recidivism? What are some of the top interventions from the top of your mind that comes out as important for us in reducing the recidivism in prisons?
Dr. George, is eternal prison time management. How do you manage the time of the prisoner's waking hours? If you leave him alone, he will breed crime, he will sulk crime, he will conspire and strategize crime. Keep him busy, keep him very engaged. Now, what all the activities in which he should be engaged from getting up to going to sleep. That means bring yoga therapy, bring meditation, bring prayer, bring schooling, bring skills development, bring community giving, bring community service. All this requires, which basically needs, it's no rocket science. It's exactly If you leave an idle mind, it's a devil's workshop. Do not leave them idle to become devil's workshop. Start your day with the prayer, yoga, therapies, and festivals, and interfaith. Respect every faith, allow them space to increase their own faith without being communal, without being ritualistic, without being narrow-minded. In fact, teach humanity through that faith. We had all faiths respected, but the one message was, this faith is for humanity, for peace, for harmony, for public service, for giving, for crime-free living, and for responsible behavior. So if you keep the devil's workshop away and keep them engaged through various activities, they remember time for yoga, there's a time for education. We had 9 to 10, 9 to 11, 2 hours of compulsory classrooms in the prisons. Compulsory classroom, 10,000 prisoners, all by used school books. So there were no budgets required. Remember, I did not ask for crores of rupees of budget in the prison budget. I engaged with hundreds of schools from outside, bringing in old used school books, putting them into the prison storage, and giving every prisoner the education level he needed. That means we ran primary schools, we ran secondary schools, we ran higher schools, and educated prisoners became teachers. Now there's a panchayat system. How do you engage them? That's a book which will explain to you how did we engage the educated prisoners as a prisoners teachers panchayat. So we had a panchayat system, we had a feedback system. This book will also explain to you how we did a feedback. So this, now how do I know what's wrong and right inside? Nobody will tell me on my face. There used to be a mobile box where any prisoner could write to me anything in the locked box. I alone had the key. So before I used to close the day, I used to open the feedback box, read all the letters and feedbacks which came from the prisoners. They told me what they needed. They told me what was going wrong. They told me what help I could give them, and we gave them all. So we gave them a voice to the voiceless, but a voice of the kind that they needed to be heard, because there cannot be emails, there cannot be telephones inside. So it has to be a locked petition box. And that was one therapy which I'm not sure anywhere in the world is practiced the way we did in Tihar jail. I do not know how well it's practiced now, because we are not going right. We are working more with the women and children, but also trying to enroll, but that's intrusion into the leadership of the Director General. So we don't intrude. We don't impose anything. We only observe and we guide if the guidance is welcome. But here's a practice. Wherever the feedback box, and this book is a product of all the thousands of letters I received, which I preserved with me. I took along with me on my transfer out of the prison, knowing that these prisoners' letters will have no value, perhaps, for my successors. So having brought them, I could analyze. So to, Dr. George, so devil's workshop, don't allow a devil's workshop, pack it with activities which are creative. But remember, Dr. George, we are not asking for more budgets. We are connecting the community with our work. That's the sum total and a holistic answer for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bedi. A very powerful principle for all the students here in the area of reform and rehabilitation. Ensure that you work with the persons who are beneficiaries of your services. Ensure that there are activities and they are engaged with the process. Reform and rehabilitation is an active process and it's not a passive process. Dr. Bedi, we have time for a few more questions, and I want to ask you about your experience working with challenges in the correctional administration system itself. You spoke about collaboration. There is also a great deal of collaboration between the prison system and NGOs and academic universities and so on. And often the mindset of those who run the prison system can be a block or challenge in bringing about reform. Can you share with us some advice on how we can approach prison systems, officials, and others so that we work together as a team and not at loggerheads with each other?
Dr. George, there is a DGP and a DGP and a DGP, and all are not equal mindsets. So look for a friendly mindset. Look for somebody who's open to suggestions. And I'm telling you, in the South, it's easier. I find the working with the southern prisons is much, much easier. But we have seen superintendents making the difference. Like Gurgaon prison is an example for us. One superintendent called Harinder in Gurgaon made all the change. Now, it's a person. Prison management is a lot of the leadership and the mindset of the leader. So if the leader is rehabilitative, if the leader is reformative, if the leader is sensitive and compassionate, man or a woman, I think you can make a breakthrough. So, and as I said, everybody is not similar. Some are softer and some are very hard. Look for the soft and make inroads and you will see. But you are already in South. So therefore, why not cover South to begin with?
Dr. Bedi, thank you. So here's another principle that you pick up from what Dr. Bedi just said. It's not going to be easy all the time. And a lot depends on people and people in leadership. And there are those who are open, compassionate, and you would be surprised at the number of such leaders that exist in several systems in our country. So she's saying work with them, use that as a starting point. And she also spoke about perhaps some cultural, regional difference that we face in our country. Dr. Bedi is encouraging us to work with the southern part of the country. She feels from her experience that they are more open to reform. So you might want to invest some of your resources in starting there. These are experiences and ideas we would otherwise not get in a textbook of rehabilitation. So thank you for that, Dr. Bedi. I have perhaps one last question to you. In the audience today, there are hundreds of young men and women. And often in their lives, and today young men and women are also advocates. They like to speak up for what is important. They like to speak around themes of fairness and justice and so on. In their own lives, their personal and professional lives, what can they do to bring about change in the correctional administration system, perspectives about crime, attitudes and beliefs about how we view those who are labeled as criminals? What are some things that the young men and women here could do in their lives right now?
Thank you, Dr. George, for asking a very good question. For the youngsters, my one message would be, look, you want to look at a mindset, you want to alter a mindset, you want to address a mindset, go through 2 E's. 2 E's. 2 E's. Yeah, your mic has to be a little away from, that's where it draws it out. It's 2 E's. One is experience, the other is exposure. If the students, my young students sitting in the audience, want to learn something, experience it by exposing yourself to it. So unless you experience and see an exposure, you will not change the mindset. So any thought will change only by 2 E's, experience and exposure. After that, no class, nobody, no theory can alter you because you've experienced it, right? As I experienced, I altered. Remember that. My mindset further improved as I experienced and I had an exposure to those 10,000 prisoners. And in the India Vision Foundation, that's exactly what we do. When we keep visiting prisons every day, the program managers, they keep experiencing and they keep exposing and they keep evolving. That is how India Vision Foundation programs have evolved through experience and exposure. I would urge all young students, volunteer time for prison, volunteer time for NGOs, but provided the leader allows you. Where the leader allows you, volunteer time for NGOs outside, no problem. An NGO will take you in. Object is you can educate, you can upskill a prisoner, you can counsel, you can do many things. You think about it. I remember during those days, we had students coming from all kinds of schools, coming and volunteering donation of school books, donation of pencils and copies. I still meet many fathers today in many functions. They say, ma'am, I am one, I came there and I gave this and I saw that and it impacted me. So I think these are very sensitization, internships. You can do internships with NGOs. Identify NGOs in your areas, in those areas, but work as interns with these local NGOs which are there. Serve them with your time. You don't have money, no problem. You can donate your time. You can donate your energy. To remember, Time and energy is more expensive. Money you can generate and beg and borrow and buy, but you cannot borrow time. You cannot borrow energy. That's your own. So if you're genuinely interested in sensitization, work with the area NGOs, local NGOs. 5, work with the staff. Whatever there is a little entry you can make into these areas and volunteer time and effort. And you will see 2 things. You will be experiencing something. You will also be through this exposure, and that will change the way you look at things. As you enter corporate world, as you enter the public service, you'll be a better human being because you'll be grateful for what you had and what you have and what those people who are inside did not have or abused it and did not understand the gratitude for what they had. So I think the only way to be grateful in life is to see the ungrateful, experience the ungrateful for what they've been ungrateful, how punished they are for that. So I think gratitude will not come by visiting some of these sensitive positions. So volunteer, work as interns with local NGOs, and then if NGO will take you inside if you take, but don't worry, it's not only prison, sorry, it's anywhere in the society. Society needs you today for responsible behavior and grateful behavior. Responsibility is never without gratitude. So if you start volunteering time and energy with causes which are around you, could be any cause you linked with, elder care, health care, education, or education of the child, or sponsoring a child, anything can be, or research, assisting, writing, data entry. I think all this sensitize you, will stand you in good stead because it will give you soft skills. The corporate world is looking for intense soft skills, and they are training thousands of people. You will grow in soft skills, and when you get interviewed by corporates and or UPSC or whatever, when you get interviewed, you'll score higher because you'll have experienced an internship. You will experience exposure for yourself, and yours will be a convincing answer. That will stand you in good stead. Investment of time and energy into causes at a student time stands you in good stead when you grow up and stand up for jobs and interviews in the corporate world. I was a Red Cross worker. I was a Red Cross worker as a 12-year-old student. I worked in the Red Cross when Pakistan-India war happened in Amritsar, and I'm from Amritsar. When India-Pakistan war happened, I used to go miles and miles driving down on my own cycle as a teenager, cleaning the hospital, helping the reception. I did not worry whether I'm cleaning it or otherwise. I served as a Red Cross student, as a 12-year-old girl. And then, of course, joined the NCC, or you have the NSS now, and then worked within means, serving the community, etc. So friends, this is the age to have the exposure and the experience. It will stand you in good stead.
Dr. Bedi, thank you for those words. Exposure, experience, responsibility, gratitude. I think the message you're telling us is get out of our spaces, be there on the field. Change and transformation is not possible if we sit back within our own comfortable spaces. We need to be out there. And you extended this principle not just to the prison systems, but to several other sectors in the world today, healthcare, community development, so on and so forth. Just the other day, I was asking a bunch of students, how many of you visited a primary health center? And just a few hands went up. And I think that is something that young men and women today need to kind of reflect upon and look at what kind of distance we've been maintaining from the spaces that actually need us. And Dr. Bedi said that young men and women can make a big difference in this whole narrative of bringing about change. Dr. Bedi, I know my time is running out with you, but I have one last bit of conversation with you. Can you share with us maybe 1 or 2 stories of inspiration, perhaps of children who you have worked with your NGO? Because you said earlier that you are not only preventing crime, but you're also preventing many other social evils like trafficking and mental health problems, so on and so forth. 1 or 2 stories that has inspired you when you have worked with children over the years, something that comes to your mind immediately.
I would ask Monica Dhawan to donate and present a book called Fateh, a book called Fateh, which has in their own handwriting children who were part of our Children of Vulnerable Families Education Program. And Pearlie has played a very good role, and Renu has played a great role, and our own other team members. Monica, can you quickly tell them one, stand up because you are right there, of a case study where children have done exceedingly well. Can you tell them quickly? But we have another book called Fateh, and please present them this book, Fateh. We are making a great documentary out of it soon. In fact, we can collaborate, Christ University, and we can work together to make a documentary out of for a book called Fateh, which has about in-hand writing of the children of vulnerable families, and they're all success stories. Fateh, Monica, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So the instant story which came immediately to my mind is the story of a girl named Jaymala. So her mother was inside Tihar prison, and she was at the age of 5 inside the prison. And we educated her through our crush program. And when she get out of the age of 6, and we continued her supporting in our residential school partner, which was a Sisi convent in Noida. And she take care of the entire education and completed her BBA also from one of the institute, and is now working in the corporate world. And she was selected to become and go to London also as a part of it. And the vision of that girl was that her mother was staying in a community in Bhavana, and she always wished that she could take entire of her family out from that Bhavana community, which is a crime prone area, and educate her other sisters also. So that's a story of a transformation from a crush, from a cradle to the graduation career, and then now working in a corporate, visiting London, and she remains grateful to India Vision Foundation for bringing that change. So that's the one immediate story which came into the mind. But there, as ma'am said, there are 13 stories which we have documented in our book Fateh, which I'll definitely share with Father and Surekha ma'am also to be put in the library, and the students can read them and can get inspired from what they don't have, but they have the courage. And we believe that every child has a talent, but they need the opportunity to explore that talent. And I'm fortunate that India Vision Foundation played that role of a guardian and a mentor to take them through that the critical area of their lifetime where their parents were not with them. But yes, the team of India Vision Foundation headed by Pearlie, my colleague, Renu Nag and Ravi, who worked tremendously with entire of these children and bring the change forth. So that's the immediate story which came to my mind. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that story. Thank you so much, Dr. Bedi, for inspiring us today. I have to conclude, and I just want to share a couple of lessons that I have personally learned listening to you today. And I've put it in the form of principles so that will be helpful for the students here. One is the principle of collaboration. We really need each other. We need to hold hands. We need to work the strengths that we have, the strengths that NGOs have, the strengths that leaders have. So that's the first principle for you, the power and principle of collaboration. The second, I think, that I've picked up from you is the principle of intuitive leadership. It's easy to strategize, but what really works in the field depends on the leader. And if you find compassionate leaders who understand what we're trying to do, then work with them and work with them well. So that's the second principle that I want to share with you, which I picked up from you. The third, of course, is of our own personal participation. You know, the principle of participation and involvement. It's always great to talk about things and changes that we want to bring in the world, but unless we go out there and volunteer, you know, it was inspiring to hear about your work with the Red Cross during the, you know, the war, during other times you worked in hospitals. And unless we have that personal experience with ground realities, I think our lives are not going to change that much, and our inspiration level still remains at the level of our mind. So that's the principle of involvement and participation, the principle of volunteerism. And you spoke about a very powerful term, that is gratitude. And it's hard for us to, you know, experience gratitude unless we have been with spaces where the lack of gratitude is a, you know, an important you know, force. So the power of gratitude. And I think it also gets each one of us to be thankful for what we have in our lives, but not remain there, but to take a step forward and see what can I do in spaces where gratitude and thankfulness is not that understood and experienced. Dr. Bedi, thank you for these great lessons this morning. And I think the conversation will continue in this conference through other sessions. But from my side and from this session, I want to thank you so much for these words of wisdom and for this experience and conversation. Thank you. And I hand over the session back to the organizers.
After such a very stimulating session, I recall the quotes of Rumi, who says, "There is a cradle in your heart ready to be kindled. There is a void in your soul ready to be filled." So this powerful and inspirational discussion has left each one of us with a spark kindled. Don't we agree, students and participants? Can I have a thumbs up from all of you if we agree? All right, I see the crowd there, entire crowd who has gone like thumbs up. So then thank you so much for that response. And I'm filled with utmost gratitude as I express my heartfelt thanks to Dr. Kiran Bedi for stimulating all of us, and especially the young minds, to work towards an inclusive and respectful society. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. So grateful.
I would also like to thank Dr. Tony Sam George for steering the session into an utmost meaningful and fruitful discussion.
pleasure to announce the title of the book. The title of the book is Correctional Psychology, Future Directions for Crime Prevention, Rehabilitation and Reintegration.
So we announced the title is Correctional Psychology, Future Direction for Crime Prevention, Rehabilitation and Reintegration. Thank you.
Thank you to both the leaders who will take this forward, and we aim to get the book published in a span of 1 year. We take this opportunity and the context to invite researchers, academicians, practitioners, and students to contribute their expertise and knowledge in the form of chapters for the book. We are happy to make the first announcement today for the call for chapters. The detailed call for chapters will follow very soon, and you will have the details on the website as well. So kindly log into the website for more details on the proposed chapter. With this, we come to the end of the inaugural ceremony, which would also be a beginning to many more enriching discussions throughout the day. Thank you all for your gracious presence and participation. Before we conclude, a few announcements and guidelines. The next event of the conference will be a panel discussion on the theme Collaborative Change for Reformation, which will commence at 10:30 a.m. Students are requested to kindly be seated until further instructions. Thank you so much.
Next session of the conference, the panel discussion. The theme of the panel discussion is Collaborative Change for Reformation. The moderator for the session is Dr. Kusum Lata. Ma'am, we welcome you to the session and to the stage. Dr. Kusum Lata is currently an assistant professor in the Department of Sociology and Social Work in Christ, deemed to be university. Prior to that, she has taught at Jamia Millia Islamia and University of Delhi. She has been awarded postdoctoral fellowship by the Indian Council of Social Science Research. She has completed her PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University and MPhil from Delhi School of Economics in the area of media sociology. Her research interests are in political economy, and she has published papers on mediation of ideology and various forms in media. Ma'am, we request you to begin the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I hope I'm audible to the participants who have joined online. So welcome to this session on collaborative change for reformation. And in this session, we are going to have interdisciplinary insights from three areas, primarily two areas, psychology and social work perspectives. And for that, we have three panelists with us who are from the field of forensic psychology, neuropsychology, and social work. So having such a diverse panel demonstrates the emphasis of the whole conference on the interdisciplinarity and its implications for policies and practice. Moreover, it shows the urge to devise mechanisms for reformation through interdisciplinary collaborative efforts. So with these words, I would like to introduce our first panel member. And please note that we have 5 minutes for each presentation. And after that, after each presentation, after all the presentations, then we can have questions based on the presentations. So our first panelist is Dr. Ruchi Sinha. Let me briefly introduce Dr. Ruchi Sinha. She is going to speak on understanding the 3 R's, that is reformation, rehabilitation, and restoration. She is currently an associate professor with the Center for Criminology and Justice, School of Social Work, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. After she has a graduation from Delhi University and a post-graduation in social work from TISS, she has done her MPhil and PhD in community health from JNU. And she joined Tata Institute of Social Sciences in 1996 as a faculty. So we welcome you, Dr. Ruchi Sinha, and we invite you to engage with the audience here with your ideas on the theme. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kusum, and thank you for that elaborate introduction. I welcome my co-panelists who I can see are there in the room. I'll just share my screen. Is the screen visible? Is the screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, great. Okay, so as Dr. Kusum has pointed out, I would be basically placing the start of this session, because the session is about collaborative change for reformation. So I thought it was pertinent that we understand the various lingos and the various concepts that we use when we are talking about an incarcerated population, because people have a very, very unidimensional understanding of incarceration. But people who have worked with people in institutions, people in prisons, they understand that there are multiple things that operate. And that is why the importance of this session, collaborative, becomes the byword for all of us who are in this session. So before we begin with what do we mean by the 3 R's, I think it's important to showcase the fact that the impact of incarceration is to be seen in multiple ways. If technically what we see is that what gets reported in the media or what gets showcased through the various mediums of media, we tend to see that there is only one unidimensional way, which is satisfied or sanctioned by the society, that gets portrayed. However, there are multiple impacts, and all these impacts have to be understood if one has to understand the principles of reformation, or restoration is what we mostly align with. So as you can see on the slide, we see that normally it is the socioeconomic impact that is seen or elucidated, and especially if the person is the earning member or the head of the household who's been the earning member for the family. However, what would happen if the person is a caregiver in the family? Then what would be the psychosocial impact on the family and on the person? It is very important for us to be able to understand that. And with the incarceration comes a whole lot of new expenses. Some are immediate, such as getting a lawyer, traveling to the place of incarceration, meeting the person. And some are long-term, because many a times families have to move away to avoid the stigma that becomes attached to the family. So the family has to restart their lives. And then obviously, incarceration is not a one-stop impact. It is cross-generational. It tends to have a whole lot of repercussions on the family. So it's not that the person has gone to the jail and that's it, we end our processes there. The impact that my past, my family has been impacted by incarceration plays throughout, and the self-esteem of the family members and their own identity gets so impacted by one episode of incarceration that the term rehabilitation then becomes quite loaded. And that is where, when we understand the physical, the psychological, the social, and the economic impacts of incarceration, the need of intersectoral collaboration to restore equanimity in society and the dignity and capacity of the person who has been incarcerated and the family who has been related to the incarcerated person becomes very important. And that is where I congratulate the organizers of this conference, that you understood that intersectoral collaboration and collaborative efforts across professions and across sectors is very, very important when we talk about incarceration and its impact on people. So I thought what was important was that we understand that what are these different words that we use. You know, in different professions, you will see different words and people interchangeably use these concepts, but these concepts are actually very, very different. The work in incarceration or with imprisoned people began with the concept of reformation. And reformation, as you can see, it's basically about altering the thoughts of the person who's been incarcerated. And if you remember the movies that you have seen in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, you will see, you know, and one very important movie that comes to my mind is Do Haath Bara Aankh. And it very, very strongly showcases reformation, that how do you change the person, how do you make the person responsible for what they have done. So the problem is seen and located within the person, and the person is changed to meet the expectations of the society. Over a period of time, say somewhere in India in 1970s and 1980s, it was rehabilitation that became the lingo, became the byword, became the process and the impact within the prison system. So we started talking about rehabilitation. Now, what is rehabilitation? You improve the capacity of the person within the prison so that they have better capacities to go and meet the expectations of society. And this gets linked very, very closely to the various prison programs that you have heard inside the prisons. So, you know, they had carpentry, they have mechanic training. These days they have IGNU classes going on inside. So whatever, if there's an artist inside, they are given painting classes so that when they go out, they can sell their artwork. And in fact, those who are in Delhi, if you go to Tihar jail's outlet, which is very interestingly branded as TJs. You will go and see some very, very interesting handicrafts and articrafts made by the prisoners, including food. So the snacks out there is also very, very interesting. So that is rehabilitation, okay, that you are enhancing. The person has come inside the prison, he has certain deficiencies, he needs to be enhanced to be able to meet the expectations of society and to live their lives once they are released from the prison. Now, the very important term here is once they are released from the prison. So what happens to the prisoners who are there for a life term? Is rehabilitation only meant for a few, or is it meant for all? So technically, the prison authorities roll out programs for just about anyone and everyone based upon the modalities of the prison handbook. Okay, so the next term that we need to be probably understanding is reintegration of the prisoners into the society. It's one step ahead of rehabilitation. So along with rehabilitation, you build the networks of the person with the society so that once they step out of the prison, they don't feel that, oh my God, we've reached a new environment or a new completely changed place outside. So if many of you are in Delhi, you will notice that the roads of Delhi have transformed quite drastically because there's metro somewhere, there's a flyover somewhere. Now that is just physical transformation. So you can imagine what is the social transformation the person will see if the family shifted from the original place of residence, if the family has dispersed. Normally you notice that the people who are earning members or those who educate in the who are studying, they move out of the houses. Now, all of these changes are too much for a prisoner to incorporate within themselves if they are left without any preparation. So here, what becomes important is connection with the family, information from the family, and the mulaqat that they do, that should be retained and ensure that it is carried on for a regular period of time. One very important concept that we haven't even reached there, and many of us have heard about terms like restorative justice. Now, restorative justice is basically minimizing the harm. And in this process, victims and community play a very important role. So the person who is dealing with the person who is incarcerated, that person has to be able to repatriate reparations with the victim so that the harm is reduced on both sides. Now, these are very important terms that we need to understand before we even start talking about rehabilitation. Now, the issues that are there that are confronting all of us professionals who are working in the field, there's a lack of understanding that offenders are not homogeneous. It's not that all criminals are the same, all offenders are the same, and everybody has got the same ways of looking at society, or that's the reason why they've committed the crime. So that heterogeneity in our perception is very important. The lens applied to keep people from becoming recidivists needs to change. We don't have to see them as people who are deficient. We have to see them as people. Some people maybe, I'm putting that within quotes, but majority of the people do not have access to opportunities for which they have to commit these incidents, which make them offenders, and then they reach the prisons. And once they reach the prisons, the kind of resources that is available, you have Dr. Upneet Lalli in the next session. She will tell you how much they...
Sorry for interrupting.
I'm finishing.
Sorry for compelling you to wind up your session as
it's finished.
Presentation. Thank you.
So basically, the collaboration has to be between different sectors. So that is the education sector, the health sector, the social justice sector, as well as the community. And we have to decide as responsible citizens that do we want to spend on more prisons or on programs that will help people to stay out of jail. With this, I finish. Thank you.
Insightful presentation. And thank you for accepting my request to wind up at the earliest. Now I hereby invite our second panelist, Dr. Sunny Joseph, who is a clinical psychologist and a neuropsychologist, and he's going to speak on use of self-concept factors in collaborative change. He is, let me introduce him briefly before we start listening to his ideas. He has done a graduation in psychology from Mahatma Gandhi University, and he's MSc in Psychology from Bangalore University, MPhil in Clinical Psychology from NIMHANS, Bangalore, and he has specialized training and certificates in cognitive behavior therapy, neuropsychology, electrophysiology, forensic psychology. He has worked with Manipal Hospital, Bangalore for almost a decade, more than a decade rather. He has conducted various programs, almost 200 programs and workshops, and collaborated with universities and hospitals nationally and internationally. So with that brief introduction, I would request Dr. Sunny Joseph to present his ideas. Over to you, Dr. Sunny Joseph. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kusumlata. Dear panelists and participants, a warm good morning. I'm really excited to be here, to be a part of this great event. Thank you for inviting me. I'm just sharing my screen. Now, Dr. Sinha was talking about 3 R's, and one of them that connect all the 3 talks today is the word reformation. Now, reformation has to do with changing an individual's personality characteristics to traits, behavior, etc. Now, in this context, this particular talk is going to be 1x zoomed into psychological interventions, specifically psychotherapy with people who've had conflict with law. Now, when we talk about psychological interventions, we have a very clear underrepresentation of people from the forensic setup due to various reasons, including a lack of awareness, accessibility, security, confidentiality, and issues. And there are many other, mostly because they are in prisons or they are institutionalized. So there is a very clear, lack of access to psychological interventions that we typically talk about. Now, however, over the last decade or so, we have had some dramatic changes, because of various inputs in clinical practice as well as research in this area. So out of those inputs, collaborative change is one of them. This has a very promising outlook as a model, mainly because this talks about an active and transparent collaboration between the therapist who would engage individuals who are incarcerated and looking forward to going out into the society. Now, collaborative change is one model which we call a strengths-based approach, mainly because this tries to use the client's strengths and personality characteristics as resources that will promote a change within. Now, the question is, why is collaborative change so different? As you understand, there are a really large number of psychotherapeutic models, like cognitive behavioral model or psychodynamic model, mindfulness-based psychotherapies, dialectical behavior therapy. Now, why is collaborative change so special? What is special about this? Now, before I go into the details of collaborative change, we need to look at a couple of factors that make a proposal or an approach like collaborative change very relevant with the population that we are talking about. Now, complex trauma is one of those factors or concepts we need to look into in detail, mainly because people who have undergone complex trauma seem to find it difficult to get into any sort of a relationship. On one side, psychotherapists or therapists are trained to use a relationship. You establish a rapport and go ahead with the other therapeutic techniques. So there are a really large number of techniques available, right from skills training to challenging certain cognitive errors or dysfunctional schema that they carry about themselves, life, a certain behavior, etc. Unfortunately, victims of complex trauma find it difficult to engage in therapy. So most of the time, engaging in therapy, opening up to someone who's a professional, who's sitting across the table, in order to help the person, this becomes a re-traumatizing event, mainly because the therapist starts challenging the individual, certain ways he or she thinks. So this, unfortunately, puts them under tremendous pressure. So when brain is focusing on a survival, because there is a trauma experienced by the person, so brain has to come up with ways to survive. At that time, the possibility of any sort of learning taking place is very low. So this is one concept we need to keep in mind. Another concept is identity transformation. Now, we have enough evidence to show an individual has to go through an identity transformation from an offender identity to a non-offender identity is something people who have, who have been, into the desistance from crime. So in spite of various social roles they might assume, they might get married, they might get rehabilitated, take on a job. However, more than those pro-social behavior, pro-social roles that they play, an identity transformation seems to be a lot more important in this context. So we need to have psychotherapeutic interventions that will facilitate an identity transformation within the person. So the question is, do we have our traditional intervention techniques helping them to do this? So this is a second concept. A third concept. Now, as you understand, the moment you...
Dr. Sunny, sorry for interrupting. I would like to request you to kindly wind up as soon as possible.
Yes, another minute. Thank you. Now, if you look at any sort of psychological intervention, we understand the importance of an engagement. The individual has to be engaged in the process of therapy. The person has to be engaged in a relationship without which there will not be any change that the psychotherapy can bring in. So therefore, unfortunately, with the forensic population, people who are incarcerated, they do have a difficulty with engagement, mainly because most of the time they are forced to get into psychotherapeutic relationship. And as you understand, this does not work because engagement does mean willingness, preparedness, and openness to undergo this process. So this is another factor that we need to keep in mind. Now, what is it collaborative change offer? So if you look at these three concepts that we have discussed, complex trauma, identity transformation, and poor engagement, we do have this particular model, this particular psychotherapeutic approach, that is collaborative change, offering a lot to take care of these factors. What are they? So as long as you are able to build a very strong therapeutic alliance with informed, decisions made, helping them to set a goal, especially by taking them through a very safe and secure environment. So collaborative change does offer a secure environment through engagement. We instill hope through understanding, a thorough understanding of the individual, instill worth through acceptance as an individual. Forget the identity of an offender. So there is a lot more understanding of the individual. Finally, so we create an environment in which the individual has a better control through the collaborative therapeutic alliance. So this is exactly what collaborative change offers. So I hope this is clear. Thank you. Thank you so much for this time. Thank you.
Now I invite Ms. Pooja Thummer, our next panelist. She is a forensic psychologist and she has done her MPhil in forensic psychology from National Forensic Science University, Gujarat. And she's a postgraduate in clinical psychology from Banaras Hindu University. She's working as a faculty and research assistant in NICFS, Delhi campus. And she has worked with Juvenile Justice Board, Delhi, and she's empaneled as a psychologist. She has a vast experience of conducting forensic clinical workshops, seminars, and webinars, and internship programs on various topics of psychology with schools and universities and other organizations. I hope, Ms. Pooja Thummer, am I audible to you?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible to me.
Okay, so over to you, Ms. Pooja Thummer, and the time limit for the presentation is 5 minutes. So I hope, like other presenters, you will be able to finish by 5 minutes. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Very beautifully, Ruchi ma'am and Joseph sir has explained the concept in different fields. Now the topic on which I am going to talk, that is also related to psychology, but I am not going to talk about much rehabilitation in the treatment, but I am going to talk about more on the assessment. So the topic I'm going to discuss, that is the assessing the criminal capacity, and that is a specialized field in the juvenile sector. So right now we know that psychologists, forensic psychologists are working with juvenile also, juvenile offenders specifically. And if you all are aware, then there a Nirbhaya case happened in 2012. Everyone knows that. And after that case, a very big amendment was done in Juvenile Justice Act. And that has actually affected the Juvenile Justice Act in very extended manner. And what was the amendment? Amendment was that now onwards from that case, everyone is not going to be considered as minor or juvenile. So if somebody is coming under the bracket of 16 to 18 years of age, and that child is committing any heinous crime, so that child will be referred to the psychologist or any other expert. They will do the preliminary assessment of this child. They will submit that report to the court, and then court will take the decision. This child will be considered as minor, or his case should be transferred to the major court. So that was the amendment. Now you can see Obviously, it is a very impact over the JJ Act and over the life of the child. Now, what is the major concern now? The amendment was done and practices start after soon 2015. Now, everyone is doing preliminary assessment of the child, and judges are taking a judgment on the basis or taking decision on the basis of those reports. But what is the actually guidelines or actually structure should be there to the preliminary assessment? And what are actually you are looking by doing that preliminary assessment? What are the areas, what are the factors you supposed to say or you supposed to look? That is the another thing. But that there is no as such clear guidelines we got about that. Nowhere it is written whenever any preliminary assessment for child for PA will go, then what's supposed to be done? What factor we should need to take care? So this is the major basis. Now, juvenile delinquent behavior is increasing day by day, that we all know. And this issue is affecting the law and criminal justice system, that is already we know. But there is no any every state and every country has their own guidelines, but there is no international guidelines for the juvenile justice system. So there's no international. There should be some international guidelines that everyone can follow. Because children are the future of every nation and the country and the world as well. So in India, mental health experts are trained to assess the mental health of individual. But when it comes to the criminal capacity assessment, that we are supposed to do the in preliminary assessment कि आपको criminal capacity assessment करना है बच्चे का. When it comes to that, our psychologists, clinical psychologists, neuropsychologists, moreover focus on the intelligence and developmental test. So intelligence and developmental test cannot be solely tells you about the criminal capacity of the person. And if you will look into the deeper way, in psychology, there is no as such word of criminal capacity. This is a word from the legal field. So the term capacity belongs to the legal field, not from the psychology field. Also in legal field, they want every answer should be very direct in just one line or in one word. Where in psychology, there is no definition of these things like criminal capacity or direct intelligence or anything. So we have a moreover explanatory way to produce the thing. So when these two fields mix together, psychology and law, so there are so many things we supposed to do. From this particular presentation or this talk, just I want to focus that relationship between law and psychology focuses on very different aspects of criminal. We cannot single hand work like psychology can work in their own chambers and law can work on their chambers. We have to come together. We have to work upon that. Also, the need to make the standardized assessment. Right now, we do not have clear-cut guidelines what assessment is supposed to be done on the children, and we are taking on decision on the basis of the assessment which we are already having. So it's a need of the time. There are lots of psychological principles, lots of theories. For example, your psychodynamic theory, your Piaget theory, Erikson theory, psychology students obviously know it. On that basis, we supposed to create a standardized test that we can produce to our authorities, produce to our policies. Also, we should not forget the whole soul purpose of JJ Act. Our purpose is not to give them punishment. Our purpose is to give them good rehabilitation. So our assessment also should focus how we can rehabilitate them, how we can assess the risk factor and the protective factor, and how we can help these children to save from the crime and how they can go back to the society again. So this is all from my side for this particular session. Thank you so much.
Without any kind of intervention, you have finished in time. So you saved me from that work. Okay, so now my job here is to summarize the discussions, and since we are having a paucity of time, I guess we have to start the next session as well. So we would be taking, if possible, only a few questions. So if I have to summarize all the presentations in one thread, what we can think of these presentations is that all the presentations have opened up with a research question or a question, because this conference is about implications in policy and practice as well. So they opened up with question which had serious practical implications. So the first presentation started with the question of how we need to understand the various factors when we understand the prisoners and how they are going to be restored in society. And the problem that was identified is that they face multiple levels of problems, stigma, and a cross-generational impact. So, and the second presentation opened up with the question of the lack of access to psychological intervention in forensic sciences. And the third presentation opened up with the question of lack of accessing the criminal capacity of juveniles. So these are the three important practical questions with which we started, and all the three presentations have a common solution which is running through the theme of this session, which is collaborative change, bringing change through collaborative efforts, maybe collaborative efforts in terms of different disciplines, which is interdisciplinarity, or collaborative efforts in terms of bringing the prisoners, the incarcerated people, and the therapeutic models together. So psychology, law, and forensic sciences, all of them together, and obviously the idea of justice, which was running through all the presentations, and they all have their suggestions in terms of how all of us should collaborate for that. So now, since we have only 3 minutes with us to complete the session, so I would just raise a common question. Okay, so I'll ask a common question to all the presenters, although there are many questions to be raised, but I am compelled to reduce them to only one question, which is a common question. And the question is, since I'm coming from the field of sociology, so obviously there has been this concern and engagement between psychologists and sociologists, that how do we understand the psychological behaviors in terms of their social roots, because any psychological behavior or mental processes are a byproduct of the social structures that we are living in. So how do you all engage with this question, that and rather the threat and a caution that we do not reduce our efforts, collaborative efforts, to a biological understanding of crime and deviance. Rather, we bring psychology back from that trap to close to sociology, where we can really understand the social roots and do not reduce a kind of a biological reductionism. So with that question, the question is open to all the panelists. So you may choose. Anybody can choose to answer from all of these panelists. Thank.
I think Dr. Sunny Joseph is the best suited for this. And I just remember when I did psychology, we did social psychology as well. So I think that should preliminarily answer your question. Over to Dr. Sunny.
Thank you. Yes, this is a very important, very relevant question, a very relevant issue. Now, most of the time when we look at cause and effect, when it comes to crime, we start with an offender, end at the victim. In the recent years, we do have an understanding that victims of crimes do exhibit certain deviant or abnormal or behavior that do not really go according to the traditional ways of looking at behavior. So what I really mean is victims do get affected emotionally, and their emotional disturbance do show up in their behavior. So there is a chain created. Now, I want you to look at the same on the other side. If effect becomes a cause, the effect becomes a cause, I want you to look at the other side. How open are we to look at the behavior of a crime? Let us say a crime itself is not the cause, it is an effect of whatever the person has undergone in the family or the immediate psychosocial environment that they are brought up. So only when we look at crime from this perspective, we will be encouraged to intervene and break the loop. Thank you.
So I would like to add with the sir only, as ma'am and sir already said. So that is true that nature and nurture debate goes hand in hand. And we all know there is effect of nature as well as nurture or any behavior. So we can't say only one perspective we can take care and one we can let go. Obviously, we have to look both the things. But now in this, modern era, we have lots of techniques that we should use. We have lots of techniques like neuroplasticity. So earlier we were not knowing about this. If we say, okay, there is some biological thing also playing role behind this crime and everything. But if we say if it is biological, we cannot do anything about it. That's a wrong perspective. Yes, biological thing is there, environmental thing is there. So some techniques, tools, and the procedure we have to apply for psychological, sociological thing, and there are some techniques by using that we can work on the biological thing as well. Like you will see clinical disorders right now. Earlier autism and other disorder, we earlier thought that there is no as such treatment for those disorders, but nowadays we have. Now those kids also can do wonder. So for these people also, if we see in the criminal area, there are lots of things to do. If they are having some biological issue, they are having a psychological, physiological. But the main thing that we need to understand that their changes can be made at any level. Only then we can go ahead. If we will think, okay, it's biological, we can't help it, that is going to be like this, they will be the criminal, so we are not going to make efforts. So first we have to understand, yes, it is possible. We can rehabilitate at every level, and we obviously do more research. We have to take help from the other collaborative agencies, organization, and we have to work upon that. So that is it on this topic from my side. Thank you so much. Ma'am, you are on mute. Not able to hear, ma'am. Joseph sir, am I right?
Yes, she's
on mute.
Dr. Kusumlata, I'm sorry. We can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we could.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
We are going to close the session. So thank you so much. And now I hand over the mic back to the organizers. Thank you.
Panelists, Dr. Ruchi Sinha, Dr. Sunny Joseph, and Ms. Pooja Thummer for a thought-provoking panel discussion. I thank Dr. Kusum Lata also for her valuable inputs and for moderating the session today. I would now like to welcome Dr. Ridhima Shukla, Academic Coordinator, Department of Psychology, to come on stage and present a token of our appreciation to Dr. Kusum Lata. This is from SASO, Stories Through Art, made by the students of the Department of Psychology. Thank you. We will now be moving on to our next session, our second keynote address by Dr. Upneet Lali. The moderator for the session is Dr. Suparna Majumdarkar. She is with us online. Ma'am, we welcome you to the session.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Suparna is an associate professor of sociology at Christ, deemed to be University, Bangalore, India. She holds a PhD in sociology from Christ and MPhil and Masters from the Delhi School of Economics, Delhi University. She is part of the Department of Sociology and Social Work and the Teaching Learning Enhancement Cell at the university. She has worked on the return migration of IT professionals to Bangalore and is currently working on the field of migration and diaspora studies. As a part of the Teaching Learning Enhancement Cell, she is currently working on the areas of constructive alignment, whole person education, as well as outcome-based education and digital pedagogy for faculty in higher education. Her areas of interest include migration studies, study of Indian society, academic coordination and management, curriculum planning, design and implementation. She will be the moderator for the session today. I request ma'am, Dr. Suparna, to take over. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's with great excitement. I hope that I'm audible. Could we just confirm? Oh, thank you so much. So it's with great pleasure that I invite Dr. Upneet Lali. She is a very interesting mix of an academician as well as a professional who's been working in the area that this conference is focusing on today. She's a qualified lawyer, a psychologist, a criminologist, as well as a human rights advocate. Dr. Lali has a degree in law and a PhD in psychology, and has been working with the principles of restorative justice and has been striving for reform and rehabilitation in the criminal justice system. She is currently the Deputy Director of the Institute of Correctional Administration, Chandigarh, where she heads the training and research wing. It's an institute that focuses on the training of police officers and prison staff. So the focus then is on reform, and it ties in with the three terms that we began this conference with: rehabilitation, recidivism, as well as reform. In one of her interviews, she had stated that there is an urgent need for us to address how the abuse of power always tends to target the weakest. And one of the ways to address this is through the need for police training. Some of the areas that Dr. Lali has been focusing on has been custodial justice, prison reforms. She's worked on capacity building and increasing knowledge of mid and senior rank prison officers, police officers, as well as prosecutors, and has been working on training criminal justice functionaries. She has also been very closely associated with policy making and has framed the draft of Punjab Prison and Correctional Services Act 2010 and 2015. Today, Dr. Lali will be speaking to us on psychosocial interventions and practices in the correctional systems. Dr. Lali, I request you to speak to us for the next maybe 15 minutes, which would give us some time to take in a lot of the questions that are coming in. In the meantime, I would also request our participants who are online to post their questions on the chat box, and I'll keep an eye on it for Dr. Lali. So I hand it over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Suparna, for introducing me. And I thank the Christ University and also the India Vision Foundation for giving this opportunity to interact with all of you virtually. And talking about prisons, these are a real closed world. So that kind of an interface is really essential for both sides, actually. And being an outsider of the system, I will also share my perspectives. I will share a short presentation. I'll be very quick with that. And then, of course, I will like more of that interaction with all the participants as such. So in terms of I'll restrict myself to the theme of psychosocial interventions. And I think from the beginning, I just heard Dr. Bedi and I heard Ruchi Sinha, all the session that was previous to that. What is the need for it? Why is the need for it? What are psychosocial interventions? What exactly is happening around the world? And what are the norms, international norms? And where are the gaps that we have? And what can we do about it? So on that note, I think my screen sharing is disabled. So if you could just enable me to share my screen, it'll be helpful. Okay. Is it visible? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I will be speaking about the norms, and of course, this I've mentioned that, and how can we, have better services? How can we? What are the challenges that exist in our system?
Sorry to interrupt you, ma'am. Would it be possible for you to put it on the slideshow mode?
Yeah, I'm doing that. Just 1 second.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm not going to repeat the same thing, which has been, I think, repeated quite often today, in terms of the shift in penal philosophy and in terms of the 3 R's of correction: reformation, rehabilitation, reintegration. Now, talking from the prison officer's perspective and the prison system perspective, there is that conflict that happens in terms of role conflict. Are we supposed to just look at no escapes from prisons? Or is the role also of a social worker? So what are we exactly supposed to do in terms of social work and rehabilitation? Because they require entirely different set of skills. Security skills are different, and social work and rehabilitation skills are different. And this is where the collaboration really works and is helpful, because you can't expect prison officers to be psychologists, and we don't have psychologists in most states in our system as well. I'm not going to be elaborating on this, but yes, students can have a look at what are the international norms which are applicable to the prison system, to the corrections field. And all these, your rules, your regulations are supposed to be in consonance with those. And also internationally and as well as nationally, we say that the health services that are outside, they should be equivalent level, should be available to those inside the prison. It's a whole society, and prisons is a total institution. So you have to look after. It's just like whether it's a hospital, and these are supposed to be like, the term used is as a social hospital, and Gandhiji had said that prison, crime is the outcome of a diseased mind. So that was the intake, that in terms of treatment. And so the psychosocial support that should be available as such. This is a quick look at the prison statistics. So we have a population of nearly 5 lakh now, I would say. And overcrowding is there in some states to a greater extent. In some states, it's manageable. But overall, yes, that is there. And another dilemma is that we have around 65 to 70%, and that's been the proportion since the last 20 years of under trials. And many of them may happen to be innocent as well. And there is really, the damage that gets done, even if it's a few days, weeks, or months, or years inside, prisons do damage. The number of convicts is much less. So psychosocial intervention should just be there for convicts or also for under trials. And I'll share that perspective also with you. Now, looking at and you are a sociologist, Dr. Suparna. So yes, prisons is a total institution. It's a closed world. It's a contradictory purposes that are there. And again, persons who have been failure in society, we expect them to go out of, come into the prison and go out as reformed, whereas they've been failures in society in a certain way because they were not able to adjust in some manner that they ended up in conflict with the law and came inside. So there is the loss of liberty, there's a loss of privacy, and how do you manage 24 hours? That is the biggest challenge. So there are emotional reactions that take place to imprisonment. There's shock, denial, bargaining, all that happens. They're bad for mental health. Prisons are definitely not places you go for healing. And we don't even ask. Now there is a change that is happening, is that how can we help? And we got talk of therapeutic jurisprudence. Factors like overcrowding, violence inside, solitude, lack of privacy, any meaningful activity, no meaningful activity, isolation from social networks, you're deprived of your family, of your friends, you lose your job, there is no work relationships. All these add to the trauma. All these really affect mental health as well. And of course, there may not be adequate health services. There may be commonly, in society, we find that, yes, in community, you don't have the mental health experts that are really required. So these are some of the, when a person enters the prison system, there's anxiety about the unknown. What will happen to me? There's a fear that you may be tortured, there may be something, and your whole idea is about, what you've seen in the movies. And I don't know, any student has been to the prison, not as a prisoner, but as a visitor. Of course, there is that whole fear of the unknown. And then, of course, depression, you may not get released on bail. Your family may not support you. You lose your relationships. And then there's confusion about what will be happening in there. And of course, difficulties in adjusting to the prison schedule as such that happens. So all these do take place. Now, looking at the need for, these interventions, and when we look at the prison population, so this is the reported part, is around 7,500 are mentally ill prisoners. And we do not have mental health assessment. The person, at the time of entry, a prisoner is supposed to be assessed, and you have the NHRC format. So there is that physical health that is measured, that is checked. But in terms of mental health screening, except for, a few places, states, we really don't have that taking place. The number of suicides that take place, this is 156 as per the Crime in India statistics. Number of prisoners on death row is 94. Now, these are all persons who are in critical need of mental health services. They're in critical need of both psychological and social interventions. We've had the courts intervening also in case of death row prisoners, in mentally ill prisoners also. I'll just discuss one brief case, which was of Machunla. Now, this is, he was forgotten by the system. Spent 38 years as an under trial prisoner in a psychiatric hospital after he was declared fit. And this was only when, outsiders, they visit and they see that, and this was brought to the notice that then that said, we need to have a record of these persons, and once there has to be a regular assessment of those. So yes, for prisoners, definitely these interventions are needed, for prison staff also. And for them also, it's a stressful environment. So they also need that support. And for the community as well, because prison health is a part of public health. So in case a person goes out and is mentally sick again, there are, and of course, why the person is there inside, and if we don't tackle those needs, those requirements, then obviously recidivism will be higher once the person gets released. This was again, this is a recent judgment of the Kerala High Court, where they have said, now we have the Mental Health Act of 2017, where they say that, okay, you have to have an assessment, and this was there, you have to have mental health review boards. So I'm just quickly going through this. So without job skills and without anything, severe and lasting physical and mental health issues that take place. Many states do not have psychiatrists. There are really no psychologists that are there. This is a big lacuna in our system, that we don't provide the services that would be needed as such. Now, why, what are the things that help prisoners? I mean, in terms of programs that are needed? Not sure this is moving. So the programs that would take place, there would be different types of programs that take place. All the purpose is not just management of time and removing boredom, but also to make them skilled, to improve their likelihood of parole and helping individuals lead a law-abiding and socially productive life after release. That's the vision, that if that is there, then you have all these programs that are there. But if the vision is just that, okay, lock them up and forget about it. Reform doesn't happen like that. You can't just lock up offenders and think that reform will happen in a vacuum as such. So these are some of the rehabilitative programs, and Dr. Bedi would have mentioned, her book deals with how they did all the different types of programs, and medical services are required. Work programs like Himachal Pradesh has a very excellent program of Har Haath Ko Kaam, that every prisoner will be provided with opportunities to work. And that from there, they gain the self-esteem and become self-reliant. And it leads to, what I noticed, it led to better mental health. Recreational programs. So you can't provide opportunity to all, but definitely recreation time and meditation, all those programs that take place. You have to feed persons inside. So maintenance programs are essential. Kitchens are run by prisoners. Cleanliness, etc. that is done. That is all, those are maintenance programs. Ideally speaking, we need to classify prisoners, and that is there in the norms. Where will the person be put? What kind of programs will he have? That's the ideal, and you would have the kind of assessment that takes place. But practically speaking, we really don't have, in India, we really don't have that classification happening. So maybe they are classified in terms of their names, alphabet-wise, that they'll be put in certain barracks, or under trial separated from. That's the only segregation or separation that takes place in some prisons, that under trials will be separated from the convicts, or of course, women are kept totally segregated from the male prisoners. But in terms of young offenders also being kept separate from the others, but in terms of their needs. So you have certain models that are there, but really doesn't happen. You have certain needs, as I mentioned, the risk need responsibility model. So does the person have antisocial values, criminal personality? Is the person of a gangster? Yes, they are kept separate. It's been said, a prisoner may come as an undergraduate in crime and go out as a postgraduate in crime. How do you stop that? So you need to know the criminal propensity, the lack of self-control, whether the individual has dysfunctional family ties, substance abuse. In Punjab state, I would say, we have about more than 60% of the prison population was having issues of drug and substance abuse. That needs to be tackled first. That needs to be tackled if we are to reduce crime, if we are to reduce the number of persons there. So that's why you need to have all these interventions that are there. Substance abuse treatment. So you have in central prisons, de-addiction centers being opened up in Punjab state. You need to have psychological programs, behavioral, social, education, and vocational programs. All these are needed to reform the offender's behavior. Prison cannot do everything on its own. So therefore, there is that need for collaboration. There is that need for partnership with communities. Specifically speaking, of course, gender is something that you cannot ignore, and women are a minority and prisons are made, I always say, with men in mind, never with women in mind. And their needs are also ignored. But they are more in need of psychosocial interventions, more in need of mental health services. They have greater stigma attached to them, and emotionally, they will be much more traumatized. The whole process of arrest and the whole process of the criminal justice system is something that is very, very traumatic for women prisoners, women in custody. And unfortunately, in many places, there are no programs, meaningful programs that are there. So facilities may be more for men, less for women. I recall the study on women inmates, the quality of life, and women prisoners that we did, and no access to library in many places. So yes, we had, community, I had people contributing, and we set up a library in one of the prisons, women prisons as such. Lack of any programs, what are you doing? So they didn't get the same facility as the male prisoners in terms of computer education, let's say. So that was, inequitable treatment. So their numbers being less, sometimes their issues do get neglected. And there would be these needs that are there, particularly that may be there in terms of mental health counseling, particularly when they are deprived of meeting their children, or their children are, so they're very traumatized, very depressed. And a lot of counseling is in fact needed. And a lot of officers say that it's very difficult to manage women prisoners because they're extreme, they fight with each other. But you don't understand, because why is that so? Because there is really no counseling that has taken place. So these are the type of psychosocial interventions that are prevalent around the world. You have therapies taking place, CBT, group therapies, trauma-informed practices, drug and substance abuse, suicide risk assessment and self-harm and anger management, crisis interventions in case of any crisis that happens, psychoeducational programs, peer-led interventions. A lot of focus now on not just what the risks are, but also what the strength-based programs, and the Good Lives model has been very successful in that. And you do have restorative justice programs in certain prisons, and healing circles and circles of accountability, where the persons relies on both sides of the offender, and sometimes offenders may also be victims of crime, particularly in case of women, I would say. So I'm not going to be specifying about a lot of psychology students would be aware of the behavior therapy. So I'm just skipping through that, the social therapy that may be there, because, and I've seen that particularly now in the youngsters and we have a huge challenge of 20 to 25 years old in greater majority in the prison population. So what are the norms of society in terms of money being of more greater value, and the peer group being one that pushes them to commit the crimes, and the changing the values and the culture, that is something that would be there. What hasn't worked is these things which is based on research. So these are the programs that really haven't worked. So you can't, threaten them. You can't create fear and think that it will help. You can't torture someone and think that, yes, punish someone and yes, the person will be reformed as such. So incarceration hasn't helped. And the first step, and this is where is how do you communicate? How do you talk to someone? The first time that the person enters the system, that has a huge impact as such. I'm just quickly going through the suicide and just discussing a little bit of the suicide study, the dynamic and the static risk factors that were found. These were some of the factors that were found to be the causes of suicide. This is from all the incidences that we did a study of about 3 years of assessment of all the suicides that had taken place in Punjab prisons. Also, somebody who's been wrongly booked, they would also end up committing suicide. And difficulty in coping with the situation. That's why we said that, you need to have counselors, you need to have facility psychologists on board. So this was the suicide prevention policy, which has been adopted now by the Punjab state. So I'll end with, yes, you need to have psychologists and counselors to assess what treatment is needed. Everybody is not in the same slot. Each individual is different. So really you need to have an assessment that takes place, and based on that particular treatment, like you don't give the same pill to everybody, it may not work. And the COVID-19 has brought into line, the need for, you don't have psychiatrists agreed, but we can have telepsychiatric video consultations, online counseling support. And I think Intervision has done that bit of online counseling. I've been a part of 1 or 2 sessions that they've had. And we definitely need to have more research. There is really that challenge that there is very less of research that takes place and our own evidence-based practices, because in India, our whole criminology theories are more Western centric. So some practices that are working out here, that have worked, we need to build up on those. And yes, alternative techniques to work. So whether it is meditation, whether it is even yoga. So all those things are having a positive impact. And a multi-agency approach is needed. Community-based approaches are needed. And we are used to living in the community. So Indians are high on the need for affiliation. We don't want our own. I mean, there is that difference from the Western concept, and it needs to be well coordinated across the different agencies. So social welfare department, health department, prison department, police, NGO communities, they all need to be on the same boat, all need to be having shared that same vision of, justice. Ultimately, what is the aim? You need to have a peaceful society. So you're confined by the walls you build around yourself, and you need to break out of those walls. So this is a picture I'm happy to share of prisoners, running across. And you have to not confine them. It has to lead to freedom, because otherwise, let it not end like a tragedy where the prisoner has no hope as such. So hope is most essential, like Viktor Frankl said. Hope is one thing that sustains life as such. So thank you so much, and I'll welcome all the questions that are there.
Thank you so much, ma'am. In fact, we have a lot of questions that have already come in. And what I'll do is I'll try and chop them together so that we can look at them in common areas. So, ma'am, based on your experience with training, could you share a little bit about the kind of successes that you might have experienced with respect to prison reforms?
So, I would say it's been a process of slow change, but yes, successes has been now that, yes, there is a realization. So Haryana, in fact, last month, this month only, in fact, we had one of the prisons being inaugurated, and the CM, he was a part of a training. And when I said that we need to have psychologists, so they are going to be having psychologists now working with the prisons. So that's one bit of it, that it's slow to bring about institutional change, but it does happen. And yes, I think the most important aspect has been the prison officers themselves realizing the need to collaborate and the need to have these interventions, need to have training. So I always say when we do counseling skills that you cannot be trained counselors, in a short program. But definitely you can learn how to be good listeners, how to create empathy. So those are things, and now that slowly you will find that, prisons are also competing in terms of doing better, developing a positive culture.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ravi. In fact, that ties in with a set of questions that have come in. The first one was about the percentage of counselors in the prison systems. And you had mentioned that most of the states actually don't have counselors or psychologists working with the prisons. Within this kind of a scenario, what would be the kind of interventions that would actually help correctional settings overcome some of the challenges that we face? I'm sorry, I think there was an echo. Would you like me to just go over the question once more, ma'am?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the first began with the observation that we don't have enough counselors and psychologists in the prison system. So given that kind of a scenario, what do you think would be the kind of interventions that would be effective in the prison system? And how do we bring in more trained professionals to make the systems, to improve the systems?
So it has to be both ways, both from the institution as well as from the places where you have these experts coming. So we need to train also. We need to start preparing counselors for working in the correctional setup. We need to start training psychologists. So correctional psychologists, we don't have that to a great degree in India. So that is something that needs to be done. We've had psychology and counseling students as interns in our institute. So they need to be oriented towards how to, work in the prison setup. So that needs to be done. And yes, there is a lack of counselors, but at the same time, As I mentioned, now there is that opportunity that you can have voluntary persons, you can have NGOs who are having counselors on board, not going daily, but even twice a week, I think. I mean, we said to begin with, let us have something rather than nothing at all. So, and of course, online counseling is something that that option was not available earlier, but now that is available. So that kind of a thing is something that I foresee will be a greater push that is going to be given forth to it.
So, ma'am, could you also share a little bit about the states which have used online counseling effectively? How has the experience worked out? Because this is something that the pandemic has actually taught us, how to use maybe the online and how do we leverage the hybrid modes. In terms of getting help into the prison systems, what would be the promise of using the digital platforms?
So I guess we need to again proceed with a little bit of caution as well on this. So privacy will, there is that part of a group conversation that takes place in the first, the ice that needs to be broken and the rapport that needs to be established first. That needs to be there. And then, of course, one is first beginning with the general and then going on to the specific individual cases. That's how it should proceed on. But yes, sometimes, even I've been amazed at the kind of openness that happens in the first instance only. But that, because it varies from, with me who has visited the prison, so yes, there would be that, and there would be that whole enthusiasm also of showcasing yourself, also for expressing yourself. That happens. So I would just say, in terms of, an acronym, it would be CARE, C-A-R-E, is you need to connect and communicate. Then you need to be aware. You need to be aware, and that awareness is essential of what the other person is feeling. It's like sometimes, people think, they're as normal reaction of students, particularly I share with this, they are as normal as anybody else outside. I said, yes, they are as normal as you and me. Prisoners are not someone, who you think are something else, or they have horns on their head. So awareness is essential. And also, I would say is, responding, respecting. That's, each individual wants that. And making the person responsible for their own life, not blaming others, because that projection does take place. So, and the last is, of course, is engaging with the other, and also encouraging and educating. So we also need to educate ourselves. Even every time I visit the prison, it's an education for me, because each time you learn something from the lives of others, and you also feel grateful that, okay, anybody could be inside. I always say, anyone could be inside. So engaging with them, engaging with each other, like what we are doing right now, that's important. And having those ties is important. And if a person is engaged, then there is hope. Otherwise, that hope is lost.
Thank you so much, ma'am, because you have actually answered a lot of the questions that were coming up even before we had a chance to pose them to you. And your session has been extremely useful for all of us to look at the kind of reforms that are being suggested and brought about in the prison system. So there is one question that has come in. I think that that's a comment that has come in from Geetali Chatterjee about collaboration to conduct research, and I think we'll reach out to you separately on that, because we have at least the departments of psychology, sociology, and social work be very interested in reaching out to you on that. So thank you so much, ma'am, and I hand it back to the session coordinator for the concluding comments.
Thank you so much, and I thank you all for the opportunity, and thanks to Monica also, and she'll also share her experiences of one of the sessions they've been doing with to the released prisoners as well. The follow-up, this session was too short, but the follow-up of released prisoners and the support is very essential so that they don't relapse back into crime. So reintegration is a big challenge.
Very true. Back to the session coordinators. I think Vidima ma'am.
I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to Dr. Upneet Lali and Dr. Suparna for engaging us and the audience today in such a fruitful discussion and address. It was a pleasure listening to you. Thank you, ma'am. Now we move on to the next session, which is the symposium. I would like to inform the students that there are 3 parallel symposiums that will be taking place. Please follow the directions and reach the venue accordingly. 4 MPCO, 4 MPCLA, and 4 MPCLB are to continue to remain seated in the auditorium for the first symposium, which will be taking place here. 2 MPCLA and 2 MPCLB students are requested to move to the seminar hall, block A, 3rd floor for the parallel second symposium. 2 MPCO students are requested to move to A419, block A, 4th floor. Online students and participants are requested to refer to the program schedule and the respective links and join the symposium links as given. Thank you. Our first speaker today is Dr. Swati Pathak. Having an experience of over 6 years in the area of counseling and above 3 years of experience in the field of education, Dr. Swati is committed to delivering client-centered support that gradually empowers individuals and enables them to make informed decisions. She has been actively involved in curriculum development for certificate courses at Mount Fort College, Bangalore, and Christ Deemed to be University, Delhi NCR. As a person, she has passion towards counseling and is associated with various organizations working in the area of child and women welfare. As an academician, she has participated in more than 30 national and international conferences, seminars, and workshops. She has also presented research papers and has also been awarded with Best Paper Presentation at an international conference organized by AIMS, Delhi. Her areas of interest include family and relationship counseling, child and school counseling, trauma counseling, and health psychology. She is also a part of the core team members for the project on curriculum development for children of incarcerated parents. We welcome you, ma'am. Our second speaker for today is Professor Sabu. Professor Sabu John is currently the coordinator of the Office of Academic Support, Delhi NCR, and an assistant professor with the Department of Psychology at Christ Deemed to be University, Delhi NCR. He holds degrees in MSc Counseling Psychology, MPhil Psychology, and PG Diploma in Life Skills, Sexuality, and Reproductive Health. And he's also currently pursuing his PhD with Christ Deemed to be University, working in the areas of biopsycho, spiritual well-being. He has also been the founding member of Center for Academic and Professional Support for Christ Deemed to be University and has served as its manager and a dynamic trainer for more than 3 years before assuming his current responsibility of supporting and expanding the academic and operational endeavors at the NCR campus of our university. He is currently a practicing psychologist along with his other academic and social welfare endeavors. He has experience of working with de-addiction and rehabilitation centers pan-India and also has worked in remote tribal villages of Kerala, empowering people to curb the menace of addiction and substance use. His recent achievements include felicitation by the Uttar Pradesh Police for leading and supervising a team of 32 trainee counseling psychologists to conduct psychological well-being and counseling initiatives for the inmates of Ghaziabad District Jail, UP. Currently, he is a part of the core team of a consultancy project for creating curriculum and training the children of incarcerated parents for their psychological well-being in collaboration with the India Vision Foundation. We welcome you, sir. Our third speaker for the symposium is Ms. Pearly from India Vision Foundation. She is head of programs of the India Vision Foundation since 2008, particularly the project of children of vulnerable families, which is a unique project in service of children of incarcerated parents. She is also a registered PhD scholar from the Department of Social Work from Jamia Millia Islamia University, New Delhi. Her expertise lie in exploring the experiences of women and children under the criminal justice system in India. Her doctoral research is on the impact of social support on the young adults of incarcerated mothers. She has also published articles on incarcerated motherhood under the purview of policies, prison reform, and reintegration in the Indian Journal of Criminology. We welcome you, ma'am. I would now like to welcome Dr. Swati on stage to take over the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And yeah, welcome all of you. So before we get into the details, let's quickly watch a video to understand what this project is all about. That is the Prerna project that we will be going ahead and seeing what we, as in the India Vision Foundation team and Christ University has come up with together.
कुछ बताना चाहती हूँ। My name is Riaika. मैं आपको प्रेरणा सेशन के बारे में कुछ